You are listening to WHICLP New Orleans 102.3. This is Good Morning Comrade. Jeff and Robert here. Did a pre-recorded show this week. Had a couple things that we need to take care of, but definitely enjoyed the show. We talk about the rail strike in the UK. We talk a little bit about hormone replacement therapy, and also we talk about possibility of a strike for the railroads in the United States. Definitely enjoy.
Like looking at like TRT, like testosterone replacement therapy, is like everywhere is a scam. It's just like, how bad of a scam is it? Like, you can go to like a local place and they're gonna charge me like $200 a month, or I could just pay like $100, less than $100 a month, and get just like tests delivered to me. But then I don't know what the hell. I mean, it's coming from like some lab in Florida, and I'm like, I don't even know what this is. It seems sketchy, but like the idea, this is actually a good. I'm glad like we stumbled on this when we were offline. This is actually a good thing talking about testosterone replacement, because like, so like steroid abuse is definitely a thing, and then like synthetic. Like taking actual testosterone is not steroid abuse. Like if it's under a doctor or whatever. And like the way I've been like looking at it, like you go get a blood test and they'll be like, oh, your testosterone's low. And they just bring you back up to optimal levels, because I'm 41 years old. And I'm like, it's crazy that like that is now like normalized to somewhat. Like it's normalized to where it's like, it's not like a cloak and dagger thing. Like I can go up the street, I can go online, I can get whatever I want, to literally get gender affirming treatment.
Yeah, that's what that is. I mean, it's literally gender affirming treatment.
But like, we want to go after trans people who like want gender affirming,
the same exact hormone.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
exact same stuff.
It's wild.
But like, that's like literally. Well, I mean, it's not even that different. Like,
it's not different at all. I don't need to optimize my testosterone. I don't have to have it to live. Mm-hmm. But I'm 41 and I don't want to have a dad bod. Like, you know, I'm eating more protein. I like a shit ton more protein, a butt ton, yucks, a lot more protein. I'm lifting weights 5 to 6 times a week. But I just want to feel like I did in my 20s. And literally what that comes down to is I want to be like Twisted Steel, like I was in the Marines. Mm-hmm. Like what that comes down to is I want to feel the way on the outside is how I feel on the inside. And that's exactly what trans people are trying to do. And like, you take like a Jordan Peterson, who you hear him rant about trans people. Like, what does he go do? He goes and has, you know, hair plugs. He goes and has a surgery so he can feel more, so he can have masculine traits of like having a full head of hair. It's absolutely ridiculous to go after somebody who wants a surgical, like surgery or something pharmacological to feel the way that they do inside, to look that way outside. And we were talking, what brought this on was
that stuff too.
Yeah, Joe Rogan, and he does it all. He's an abuser. See, that's different. See, that's different. Like, he absolutely does. Allegedly, if Joe Rogan ever hear, he's an alleged steroid abuser. Because if you look at him with no shirt on, he's got the classic steroid abuser bubble gut. No, he looks like he has a turtle shell on his stomach.
Like, also, I mean, you've seen the picture of him with the nips, right?
He's got gyno. I didn't know. I don't know all that.
Hold on, let me show you.
So I'm not. Yeah, so that's the difference. Is like, I'm just trying to optimize what I already have. Mm-hmm. And like and just while you're looking for that, trans people are trying to do the same thing. Like every human being, I don't care what. I don't know anything about that. I don't know.
This right here. I mean, that's not normal, right? That cannot be normal.
I don't know anything about that, but I know that bubble gut is what steroid abusers have. Mm-hmm.
He's got the cop thumb head too now. He never used to have the cop thumb head, but now he's got the cop thumb head.
I don't know. I mean, that's not a steroid thing.
That's
but
just a cop thing.
I don't know what that is, to be honest. I know what you're talking about.
It is what it is. The cop thumbhead. Like maybe he just like thought his hair was gone.
I mean, now we're getting into bro science because like there is a thing like if you have more testosterone, like you have, but that's like genetics. I don't think you can put that on. Like you have your forehead ridges are like a lot more pronounced, and you have like a thicker chin when you have more test. But I don't think like if you look like even like if you look at China, like Joni Lawler and stuff like that. But like a lot of that's genetics too. Like, and I don't mean that steroids got like.
Did she do steroids?
Yeah. But the thing is, her genetics were already there.
Yeah, she was a big framed woman.
Right. So what that is she had more testosterone naturally than like the average woman. And so it's like natural for women to have testosterone anyway. It doesn't matter what gender we came out as, or not. Actually, see, look at me. I'm using the wrong stuff. It doesn't matter what sex we came out as,
or which we're assigned at birth.
We both have like male sex, not gender, but male sex and female sex. We have the same hormones in us. It's just what balance of what. So if somebody's like, yeah, like the way I feel this way, so I want more testosterone, and like that's. Men are doing this. You can watch a commercial on late night TV. So watch ESPN at like Sports Center at midnight. You're gonna see some guy with a pot belly talking about how he feels sluggish and slow, and all he got this cream that he rubs in his head. It's like he's on the cream. He's on the same thing that Barry Bonds was on.
Yeah, man, that whole Barry Bonds thing. When you think about that, like forever ago, like. The whole steroids witch hunt that baseball is they're still doing it really with the Hall of Fame and stuff like that. Like they're still like is Barry Bonds even in the Hall of Fame, even though he's the greatest hitter of all time?
No,
like that's crazy.
Like, now, if
Barry
you want to transition to sports, like my opinion is like
Barry Bonds is a jerk. He's a terrible person. He like was awful with fans.
Yeah,
he like hated. He was terrible with the media. It sounded like he was terrible with his teammates. He didn't join a union. Like there's a lot of negative things about Barry Bonds, but the truest thing about him is that he hit the ball harder and farther than anybody ever did. And with the it was just like I don't know. And he was a 500 guy.
Yeah.
And he had his head got bigger and bigger because of the use of these steroids or whatever. But like who cares? Like that's the one thing that, like if you want to send Barry Bonds up on anything, like go for it, except for the steroids. I don't know, man.
Well, the thing about steroids and like if you want to transition to just like a guy like me who just wants to have an optimal test level and I'm just a normal guy working a desk job, and you want to transition from that to gender affirming pharmacological treatments or surgery to sports, my opinion is all athletes should just be on testosterone.
They're trying to be the best, right?
All of them, and then they should just be medically monitored so like people aren't abusing.
If you can compete in sports without doing steroids, God bless. But like,
well, it's not even about like. It's about getting the optimal effort, for the work the optimal outcome for the work you're already putting in. But the real reason that like people don't want to talk about why you should be on it, like, is because of recovery. And like I'm not saying like, wow, this is like the sports steroids show now. But like children, like youth sports, absolutely not. And it's not like because it's because one, your testosterone levels are already through the roof. So you're already going to be like an abuser already, and it's going to mess you up. Two, you don't like the craziest kid who's playing like travel winter league baseball has time to recover. So we're like a professional, like MLB, like baseball player. The reason why you're taking steroids at that level is because you're playing 60 games a year or something. 182 games a year, and you need that to recover. How we got onto this before we came on the air, we were talking about wrestling, and that guy Kip, whatever, the guy who was
Billy Gunn.
Yeah, Billy Gunn. He is like an advocate for TRT and testosterone.
He's a massive, huge,
and he's a huge old man. And he's like
68 or like 60, almost 60 years old. And
he's like, I need this for recovery. And it's like, that's true though. Like I'm 41 and I'm hitting the gym and my joints are just like, my muscles don't get sore. My muscles recover. My joints, whoo,
hurts bad, man.
Buddy. And it wasn't like
that. Ain't no joke.
No, it wasn't like that 10, 20 years ago. and like my joints are on fire for days. And so just having like an optimal testosterone level will help you recover from that. And if like a woman wants to have, and I mean like a woman in all sense and all gender, like if they want to have an optimal estrogen level so they can feel going back, so they feel the same way, they look the same way on the outside as they feel inside. Who am I? Like I'm nobody to say that shouldn't be happening. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Like do
Boys,
that.
girls, and
Make it
NBs.
happen.
If hormones work for you, then take them.
Yeah.
Regardless of your gender, regardless of like
right.
or trans or whatever.
Like nobody, and I tell you, like to be straight up, if you want to talk about, anabolic steroid use or abuse or whatever, like a lot, like guys are doing that, abusing that recreationally for fun, just because they're like, oh, I want to add 30 pounds to my bench or like whatever. Like I want to look good. Like no trans person's doing that for fun.
Yeah.
No one's like, oh, it'd be cool. It's like the cool thing to do. Mm-hmm. Nobody's thinking like that.
Also, like cultures of that stuff that are like implemented by the boss. That's a problem. Was in WWF in the 1990s, right? Remember that? Sure. That was another big deal. That like Vince McMahon was essentially like running a steroid operation. I mean, he was acquitted of all charges, but like allegedly.
But ironically, like that stuff will mess you up. Like if you are abusing it, like it looks crazy. Like one, it makes your body look crazy.
Oh yeah.
Two, like it does mess up your cardiovascular system, but like the poison's in the dose, like everything else pharmacological. Like if you are just optimizing and you're doing it under a doctor's care, like there's nothing dangerous about it. Have you ever watched that movie? I think it's like a maybe 15-year-old movie now. And I think it's free on YouTube. It's called Bigger, Stronger, Faster.
No,
it's like a movie about anabolic steroids, and then
that was that was the workout routine that we used when I was in high school, like Bigger, Stronger, Faster, or something like that.
Yeah. And then they talk about that, and he compares it to like SSRIs or like kids taking Adderall. Like everybody's on something, like just caffeine to get through the day, that kind of thing. But no, it's good. That's my I don't know. I just had that on my mind because I'm like, oh, my shoulders are sore, man.
You want something to make that better, right?
I know, but it's hard to find. It's hard to find a clinic. I tell you, it's hard to find a clinic that's like doesn't feel like a scam and isn't like overcharging me. It doesn't feel shady. It's either it feels legit and they're charging me way too much that I know this is like, oh, $250 a month. That's crazy. Mm-hmm. And then another place is like, oh, this is, $55 a month. And it just feels so shady.
Yeah. Like, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Like, nah, it's got to be something in the middle. I'm looking for it. Got to be something in the middle between like going to the Mayo Clinic and like meeting a guy in the bathroom stall at the gym,
right?
Which is what like a lot of these online clinics feel like. Like I'm not doing that.
Yeah,
it's wild.
Well, you want to change gears? Sure. Let's talk about look, you've been to Trader Joe's before, right?
It's once or twice. They have the cowboy caviar is real good.
Yeah, it's the place where they have like the
Aldi food that they charge more for.
Yeah, basically, I mean, they have
it is so
stuff, I guess they have like a decent beer selection or whatever, but like most of it's just like frozen food that they sell that you can like cook up. But it's like it's a store that like a lot of I don't know, like middle class, like suburban white people go to, basically, right? That sound fair?
Oh yeah, it is owned by Aldi though, right?
I didn't know it was owned by
100%. It's owned by Aldi. Mm-hmm. Fact check me on that. I know it is, but like, yeah. So it's just Aldi. I mean, like the food is good. Mm-hmm. But I like Trader Joe's, but like, yeah, it's so easy to spend like a C note in there. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Trader Joe's just today.
Fact check myself.
Just today, it was announced that the first store in that chain has formed a union Trader Joe's store. This is from the Guardian. I'm reading from. Trader Joe's store in Massachusetts become first to unionize. The supermarket chain is the latest major company where workers who passed a vote 45 to 31 have unionized. So there you go. Shout out to the Trader Joe's union.
It's pretty
That's
cool.
coming off the heels of. I mean, again, Starbucks have done hundreds of stores already and still counting. All kinds of stuff. So we have a whole lot of workers doing organizing and doing cool stuff. So shouts out to the workers over at Trader Joe's.
No, I love it. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, more unions, the better.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I can just read from this article real quick. Employees
Please.
at a Trader Joe's supermarket in Massachusetts on Thursday became the latest workers at a large company to approve a labor union. The store in Hadley, about 80 miles west of Boston, is the first Trader Joe's with an employees union, although workers at 2 other locations have initiated union efforts in different parts of the country. Vote passed 45 to 31. And it's part of a nationwide wave of employees at major companies who are attempting to unionize. I mean, right now we have Amazon, we have Starbucks, now we have Trader Joe's. It's all kicking off. So I mean, like, this is awesome, man. I mean, this is one of those things where we got workers just doing organizing. It's sweet. Robert?
No, go ahead.
Organizers at the Hadley store launched the effort in May, and an open letter to the company CEO Dan Bain, citing concerns about pay, benefits, and safety. About 89 supervisory employees were eligible to vote, including what the company calls crew members and merchants. They can never call workers workers. Like, if you ever work at one of these places, like, I remember when I applied for a job, I didn't get it, like, one time to go like Outback. And it was like, oh, you want to be an Outbacker, huh? It's like why can't you just be like a worker?
Because you have to be a team member. You have to like have buy-in to have your fake. It's. We were talking about cults earlier, like off air, and how I was in a sales cult, and that's that cultist behavior. It's to try to change language, and then that way, so when things are going bad, you feel like you're part of the Outback, TGI Fridays, Bennigan's family, and it kind of freezes you for a moment before you hit the door. Yeah, so it's to make you feel like, oh, they really care about me here, and absolutely not. I'm so glad I work at a place where like I don't have to, like, I actively be like, please do not. If you use the word challenge in front of me, I'm gonna throw hot coffee at you.
Or like
I know when you say it's challenging, I already know you're trying to play me like Boo Boo the Fool.
Yeah, when I was fighting,
please don't use that language.
When I was fighting with Cox all weekend, and like in parts, like literally my internet's been out like day after day, like running up into today. And like one of the things that they would always say is, "Oh, I can understand why this is customer service people and doing corporate speak." And like obviously this is not on like the customer service person, but like the thing that they would always say is, "Oh, I understand how challenging it could be when you have interruptions of service. How can we work towards solving this problem together?" You know, like instead of saying like we as the service provider, how do we fix it? No. We have to fix this problem together. Like sharing the responsibility despite the fact that you're paying them to provide this service.
Well, that's a little different because I've had that job, and what you're doing is you're doing reflective listening like a therapist, to where like your boss, like that kind of the corporate cult isn't reflective. The corporate cult is, we came down off of Mount Sinai and here are the tablets, and this is what will go and will not go in the Outback Steakhouse family. But never forget, we are a family. Yeah. So when I ask you, when I tell you got to stay late to cover a shift, it's to benefit the family. It's not to benefit the corporation of Outback. You're doing it for the family of the Outback. Yeah. But that's the difference. I've had that job. Like a lot of people, the reflective listening thing is, a lot of people just want to be heard. They want to be heard. They want to have their thing. They're not even necessarily looking for an answer. They just
No,
want you to
I was
understand.
looking. Let me assure you, I was looking for an answer. I wanted my internet back on. That's
I
what I
know.
wanted.
I
anyway,
know.
I just like wanted to just compare. Like, let's say that the corporate speak sounds similar in certain kinds of ways.
No,
You know what I mean?
absolutely. And see, that's one of my red flags. If I go on a like, to the point of my life, if I was on a job interview and the hiring manager, HR, whatever, starts talking about how challenging things are, or I dip out. I'm already like, this is a nonsense place. It's
It's abuse.
toxic.
It's
We're not
really
doing that.
abusive. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, instead of just but you'd be surprised how many people it really. I don't know. See, this is one of those things where I'm not better than other people, but this is one of those things where it's like I really question my own head because I rather be told, because that kind of stuff works for a reason.
Yeah.
I'd rather be told, hey, Robert, this thing I need you to do is bad. Like, it's really bad.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I need you to do it, and here's why. And I can deal with that. Mm-hmm. But if you try to tell me,
respect honesty is
thing. But if you try to tell me something's not bad, and we all know it's bad, and the emperor has no clothes, it's an extra. It's not only am I going to have to do something that's bad, it feels like you're insulting my intelligence. It feels like you're playing me like a fool, and I cannot deal with that. That is more of a slight than doing the thing that's bad. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people can't deal with that though. Yeah. A lot of people can't. A lot of people need to be like coddled and have their hands held. I don't know. It makes me feel like I'm crazy, like a pop person. I don't know.
Oh, I would never call you not crazy, my buddy. Don't worry about that. But like, I mean that in the nicest way possible.
No, I know what you mean.
But like, anyway, shout out to the Trader Joe's Union, just to kind of circle back. And then I kind of wanted to move on to something that's really exciting. So like, how much do you know about this transportation strike that's happening in England right now, in UK, and
to be honest, none, because what I know is, I know what's going on at number 10 Downing Street. I know a bunch of people who stabbed,
Boris Johnson.
Boris in the back are now trying to clamor and get that job.
Justice for Boris. Is that what you're trying to say?
I don't know. I'm trying to say I wish that Labor was better.
Yeah, well, it's not. I mean, tellingly. So basically, there is a transportation strike taking place in the UK right now, and notably on that front, like the Labour Party, the American Labour Party, I mean the UK Labour Party, has very conspicuously decided just to like not back the labor union that's on strike right now, which is just so ridiculous. I mean, the idea that you have a labor party that doesn't support labor is like, why do you exist? Right? You're just literally the other party of capital, the other party of lords and monarchy and earls and all this other stuff. It's ridiculous. But anyway, one of the people that has come to my attention who I didn't know about prior is Mick Lynch. Which is like, by the way, like a super like oi bruv British name, isn't it? Mick Lynch.
Sounds like a boxer, yeah.
He does sound like a boxer. And then like he's got this other dude named Eddie Dempsey, which is also sounds like if those two dudes were fighting, it sounds like somebody from like the 1980s or 70s who were like, scrappy British lads coming in, fighting it out. What was the I don't know. Anyway, here is what?
What are you gonna say?
I don't.
You're gonna say something cringe and then pull back,
buddy. I would never ever say anything cringe. I would never do that. Don't even. It makes me laugh. Anyway, here's Mick Lynch when asked, because I mean, obviously, just like in America, the British press, when workers decide to actually stand up for themselves, like people start talking about, are unions doing too much? Are they too powerful in, Great Britain? That old chestnut, like obviously when, when workers go on strike in America is like, wow, what else did the workers possibly want? And it's always framing it in these really like BS ways. It's never are the bosses too powerful or anything like that. It's always the workers wanting too much. But anyway, here's Mick Lynch addressing that question.
We haven't got too much power. The problem in this country is that trade unions don't have enough power. That's why so many people are suffering poor wages.
That's
such an imbalance in the workplace. And it's a shame that the Tory party is descending into an ultra-right clique at the moment. And Liz Truss is seeking to take away human rights and the ability of the democratic right of people to express themselves through their trade unions and industrial action, which is one of the pillars of our democracy. It's only repressive regimes that stop people going on strike and stop them expressing themselves and stop them rebalancing the power in the workplace through their trade unions.
Right. So, like, literally the idea of workers standing up for themselves and, like, that is, like, that's the most basic rights that you can possibly have, right? I don't know.
Of course.
And this framing that, like, workers shouldn't have the power to stand up for themselves or to like fight for better wages, fight for better benefits, fight so that they're not getting screwed over at the job like every single day is one that is like fundamentally it doesn't even fit like the liberal framework of the world, if you know what I mean. Like the idea of like Enlightenment liberalism and like these rights of free speech and free association and all these other things, like the fact that these workers can't express themselves in that way is actually pretty like in line with that framework, even though like it doesn't go far enough. I don't know. Like it's just extremely absurd to even ask the question, like, do unions, which are the representatives of workers, do they have too much power? But it's never the boss. The boss never has too much power.
I'm trying to think, like, in the UK, like, where would that rhetoric come from? Because at least
in man, it comes from like the main media outlets in the country.
Well, no, I mean, like, what leg does that have to stand on? I'm trying to look at it objectively, because okay, if you're gonna look at like America, and if somebody says, well, you know, or have unions gone too far? Like, obviously that's nonsense, but you could at least use like the cudgel of like organized crime. I'm trying to pull at any kind of straw, to be like to try to bash people over the heads with, you know, like, oh, like the Teamsters were involved with the mob, whatever, and be like, that's the unions going too far. Like, what's the example of like unions going too far in the UK, in Great Britain? I mean, I'd love to know if there is one. Maybe I should Google that and educate myself. But it's absurd. Well, it's like what you said.
I'll just say that this definitely isn't it.
No, it's absurd. Like what you said. It's like skyrocketing. You know, CEOs have never-ending profits that aren't shared with the people who make those profits, and it's never too far for them. You know, you've got Obama out there. I'm trying to think of somebody British. You know, I don't want to pull like. I'm tired of talking about Elon Musk and Jeffrey Bezos. Let's talk about Richard Branson. You got Richard Branson making a fool of himself with the St. Augustine, you know, with the St. Aug band here in New Orleans, and funboarding with Obama. It's never too much for him, never. But it's always too much for somebody who like is just trying to make ends meet, who's actually making a way so this man can go funboard.
Here he is on Good Morning Britain reacting to the idea of nationalizing the rail system in Great Britain, which is, I believe, and maybe we'll get a little more information on that here, but like I believe it's still owned by the government. It's just like the service of like running the rail system is contracted out to like companies, almost like charter schools here. You know, essentially like the responsibility falls on the government, but we're doing public-private partnerships to because that's more efficient or whatever. But here's Lynch on the idea of nationalizing rail. Let's pause real quick for station ID. You were listening to WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3. This is Good Morning Comrade.
Well, joining us now is the RMT's General Secretary, Mick Lynch. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining us this morning. So, another day of disruption. Why is there no agreement on this? What's the sticking point from your point of view?
Well, Network Rail have made a set of proposals that are unacceptable to our members. They're changing their work-life balance, they're changing their unsocial hours, and the pay offer, which is an offer over 3 years, is inadequate to address the cost of living crisis that we're all experiencing. And on the other hand, we've got the train operating companies who've got an agenda to shut every booking office in Britain, go back to the guards disputes that we've been dealing with over the last 6 or 7 years, and they also want to make mass redundancies, and they've made no offer on pay whatsoever to us. So we've got a situation where we've got a large gap to bridge, and we're not in a position now where we can settle. So we need to work hard on this. We need to get the negotiations on again, and we need a government that's willing to facilitate an agreement, because the government is vetoing a settlement in this dispute. Grant Shapps is the Minister of Transport, and he has a veto over the train operating company's negotiating position, and of course he is the shareholder and owner of Network Rail. So we've got...
All right, so really quickly, the people that they're negotiating is Network Rail, right? And the companies that are sort of a part of that, Graham Shapps, he's the transportation secretary, and he owns a stake in these companies, and he can just unilaterally reject any deal that that would be settled. Essentially, he's a transportation secretary. He's got obviously a conflict of interest. He's not going to recuse himself, of course, because he's he's not a cuck, obviously, because he's not going to do that. But that's just sort of like setting the table.
Position where we need to work some solutions through around the negotiating table, and we're not there yet.
Okay, well, we're speaking to Grant Shapps later, so we will get his response to that. But from the point of view of the pay, then you've been offered this 2-year 8% deal. Where in your mind does that need to get to? Because
so it's like an 8% increase in funding, but no pay raises for workers. And again,
sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've got the 8% deal. They say they've given you a no compulsory redundancy guarantee, other benefits and extras on the table, but they say you left the talks over that. So does it just come down to the pay? Because they have said that there'll be no compulsory redundancies. Is the main sticking point for you the level of pay increase that your members have been offered?
Well, it doesn't come down to the pay, no. It's a pay deal over 3 years. Our members got no pay increase last year, and they've offered us a 2-year deal over the next 2 years. So it covers a 3-year period where inflation at the moment today is 11.8% on the retail price index. So it doesn't match this year's cost.
So what he's saying really smart. He's basically saying that even if they're getting a slight pay increase or whatever, the fact that it's not in line with, it's not even the same as inflation, which is the how much more stuff costs over the next year. The fact that it's not even that, it's such a crappy increase that it's not even worth considering. It's essentially a slightly less pay decrease than if they got nothing.
Damn.
And it won't match next year's cost where inflation will be high. But on top of that, we've got some conditions of service proposals where they're looking for 50% cuts in the maintenance regime, which we think is not safe. They want to move us to a position where we're taking on a much more unsocial hours contract. And there are changes to the working practices which are not acceptable to our people, which we think will make their working lives a misery. Now, we can work on that. We can get to a position where we get the modernisation that the company is looking for, but they've got to value the changes they want properly so that our members get a square deal. But on the other side of this, we've got the train operating companies as well, which is 50% of this dispute, where we've not got an offer on pay whatsoever that is anywhere near suitable. So there's a big division between the two sides. But the person that's responsible for that is Grant Shapps. He owns Network Rail, effectively, and he has a veto in the contracts on what's offered to us. And he is in charge of industrial relations in the train operating companies, and that's written into their contracts.
Mick, there was a threatened strike at British Airways, and then that was called off because they managed to do a deal. Grant Shapps told us last week he was involved in bringing the two sides together. Why is it possible to get a
That's
deal
how you know it was a bad
in the
deal.
BA strike, but not in this rail strike?
You know it was a bad deal because Grant Shapps is the one that came in and brokered it. The Tory transportation minister's like, you know what? Here's a terrible deal. You'll take it, and unfortunately, the workers took it. Look at this dude, by the way. Just
look at this dude.
Look at him.
Well, I imagine it's because
he even looks kind of like a boxer. Mick Lynch just looks like a boxer.
Oh yeah.
He's got that vibe.
In the aviation industry want to get a settlement. I don't think Grant Shapps wants to get a settlement to this dispute. We've seen the two Tory leadership contenders puffing out their chests and saying that they'll make effective strike action virtue.
Yeah, and by the way, this took place, or this is taking place, right in the middle of, you were saying earlier, Boris Johnson, the weird British version of Donald Trump, being ousted. So the government is in complete disarray and chaos, and you have the two people that are contending for his job essentially saying I'll give the workers at the rail companies a worse deal than the other guy, and it's just a race to the bottom in that way. So this doesn't seem like it's going to end anytime soon.
Actually illegal. So if you're talking to him, if he wants to give me a ring and get in contact and facilitate an agreement, we could get round the table with him this afternoon if he wants. I know where he works and he knows where I work. So if a deal going, I'm very happy for him to
I love this dude, man.
Catch me outside. How about that?
Ask you about there's been a bit of confusion in the last couple of days about Labour's approach to...
I know where you work, son. I know where your mama work.
And also about whether ministers should be on picket lines. But just to ask, if Labour were the government and the railways were brought back into public ownership, how do you think that would change things for you in this kind of dispute? Who would you be talking to, do you think? And the kind of things which are being asked of your members at the moment on pay and on modernisation, those reforms, do you think they would change if there was a Labour government and a nationalised railway?
Well, I think if we had the railway in public ownership, we'd properly fund it. At the minute, what's happened here is that Grant Shapps and the Treasury have removed £2 billion from the funding of National Rail, and they've removed £2 billion from the funding of London Underground, and that's caused a massive gap. And this is where the savings that they're seeking to make, which comes out of the pay bill and other measures, has come from. So if we had a properly funded railway, we wouldn't have this problem. And if we had a properly funded railway, we'd have a more secure future, not just for the workers in the industry, but also for the passengers, so that we could get a proper fare structure that people get value from. And the railway would be running in the interest of the economy and the interest of the environment and the interest of the users.
So
at the moment, the problem is that
he smartly answered that too, talking about how so he didn't say we definitely want to have a nationalized rail system in the UK. He probably may, I assume he would say that we should have that or whatever. But he kind of answered it in sort of a squishy way, to the point that he would basically say, just fund the railroad system and stop trying to catch me on a different question.
Sorry, Mick. So Labour would be putting more public money in.
In the worst year for...
Sorry, Mick.
Not necessarily. Last year, in the worst year of passenger revenues, the private companies took out £500 million of profit from this industry. And that's where one of the big gaps has come from. So if we got rid of the privateers, we could concentrate on running a service for the benefit of the people.
And if you had Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak, they're going to legislate to say strikes in railways are illegal, would you then advise your members to break the law, or would you be fighting the government in the courts?
Well, we will look at the law and see what we can do in the courts. But if they make it impossible to have lawful industrial action, then workers will have to see whether they take unlawful industrial action. That's
just the Cockney Malcolm X.
Dude,
by any means necessary, mate.
I don't mean to say that, I don't mean to be that negative on American labor leaders or stuff like that, but I cannot imagine a single one of them that I can think about other than Sarah Nelson or Christian Smalls saying something like that.
No, absolutely. Yeah, anybody with actual power? No way.
Sarah's got power. And she advocated. She did very much a similar thing when they did the government shutdown a couple of years ago. Basically saying that we're not going to put our own workers in danger on these underfunded flights or whatever. And that's how she sort of made her bones. And this is Mick Lynch saying something that's even I would say a little bit more out there, in like the best way possible, saying that if the government makes it illegal for workers to strike, then we're just gonna have to ask. He really put it in a smart way too. He basically said we're gonna have to have our members decide if they're willing to do it unlawfully, which is the right way to do it, because unions are supposed to be run by the members, at least to some level. They're supposed to be run for at very least by the consent of the members. And again, unfortunately, a lot of the times the way we sort of see these things kind of play out is that when running afoul of the law gets involved, a lot of the times, and this is not historically always the case, but it's a contemporary phenomenon, at least for the past since the Reagan fired all the air traffic controllers. Basically, running afoul of the law is like not something that labor leaders are interested in doing. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely not. Like our labor leaders are trying to work within the system. This guy's trying to kick the whole table over, which I love and respect. Like, because I'm to the age, that's the only thing that's going to get anything done. You can't.
You got to rattle at least a little bit harder,
Yeah, you do. You can't just look for You can't just look for a spot at the table. You got to be working to create a whole new table. Mm-hmm. I know that's a longer project and a harder project, but
I mean, otherwise it's just constantly taking L's forever, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Industrial action, then workers will have to see whether they take unlawful industrial action. That's a matter for them at the time. We'll have to see what the law says. But we've come from that place. I was at the Toll Puddle Martyrs Festival last week where we were deporting trade unionists. We used to charge trade unions with sabres. Now, the way that Liz Truss is going on her direction from being a liberal to being an ultra-right hardliner, maybe she's going to bring that back as well. No doubt she'll be saying bring in the army next. But what we do need is a settlement to this dispute. And we need a Bill of Rights for workers in the workplace so that they can get a proper set of agreements and have some stake in the workplace.
Okay, that's a little bit too far. A Bill of Right for workers? I don't know about all that.
Okay, that's enough of that.
All right, time to end this conversation. Anyway, that was pretty awesome. I mean, I don't know, man. Like, I get pumped up for that kind of stuff because I'm a nerd.
No, he rules. I like your nerdiness.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, there was also a really dope interview with Mick Lynch that I posted on my Twitter that I kind of want to go through a little bit here as well. And then we can sort of jump because there's actually a little bit of talk of railroad workers in America that are possibly going to go on strike nationally. But we'll get to that in a minute. Here's Mick Lynch. It's no good being pissed off. We need organization. This is from Tribune Magazine. In the weeks since the 40,000 RMT members voted for strike action, the largest rail strike since at least the 1980s, a lot has changed in the national conversation. The cost of living crisis has pushed millions of workers to the brink of poverty after a decade of pay squeeze. Inflation is running over 11%, and even the basics are increasingly unaffordable for many people across Britain. This was the backdrop to this summer's rail strike, which pits the RMT and also ASLEF and the TSSA, both against profiteering rail companies and the Tory government. The ministers and bosses believe that the strikes would be massively unpopular, but polls in the recent weeks have consistently shown public opinion moving in favor of the workers. That's important to have the public on side because that means they're against what the government's doing. In favor of the workers and their trade unions. Is this the start of a wider fight back of working people? Tribune sat down with Mick Lynch. So here's some questions. A lot has happened since the rail strike kicked off in June, but I think it's worth reminding people about why it started. Can you give us some background in the dispute? This is the reporter, Ronan Botenshaw, who does great work, by the way. Ronan's pretty awesome. The background, this is Lynch talking. The background is COVID. As soon as COVID came around, the passenger numbers dropped because they asked people to stay home. The government asked people to stay home. And they came to us, the government and the companies, saying that the industry's got to change. They wanted to use this as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to cut costs and get working practice changes that they've been after for years. So it's exactly what they've been pushing. So essentially what that means is when COVID happened, they busted out the old never let a disaster or a good disaster go to waste playbook and decided to say, hey, this is how we can just gut the public sector, right? This is how we can essentially cut down on public transportation and get people into individual vehicles. Like we have all over America. If you don't live in like one of a dozen cities in America or so, then you're SOL when it comes to transportation. You need a car, or you need to be able to bike to wherever you got to go. It's been delayed from summer 2020 because the train operating companies collapsed. Since that time, they've been working out emergency measures in passenger service contracts. The government has been stuffing their mouths full of gold, in effect, and saying, we will take all the risk out of your business. This is basically just completely and utterly giving everything to the companies that run the rail system. You won't have to put any capital at risk. Your returns will be lower, but it'll be guaranteed. They've got this model now that the companies get a royalty, essentially, of all the cost of the business. So essentially, like they're essentially get to do like their guaranteed income. So it's almost like that they're almost like tax collectors themselves. The companies have essentially been put to an extension of the government, right?
That's awful, dude.
Mm-hmm. How much do you think the Boston Network? Whoa, what was that? How much do you think the Boston Network Rail and maybe the government too see a future for this rail country in this country without a well-organized fighting union and the RMT involved? He goes on. But essentially, he again advocates over and over again for workers being organized and fighting for what they need. So I recommend everybody to check out the article. It's in Tribune Magazine by Ronan Burtonshaw. It's called Mick Lynch. It's no good to being pissed off. We need organization. So I don't know. I thought that was pretty dope.
Yeah, I mean, I just wish, like, going back to what you said again, I just wish we had fighters like that in this country. It seems like I don't know too much about, except what gets fed, over mainstream media about British politics, but it seems like they have some semblance of a left. Mm-hmm. We don't have any, like, as far as the left with any kind of power. The
left got completely neutered though when it came to like knocking out Corbyn. When Corbyn was essentially neutralized as a threat, politically, I don't think it's unfair to say he was assassinated by
no, not at all,
completely and utterly scurrilous
not unfair
anti-Semitism charges that are based in nothing. Like, he was completely and utterly smeared and ousted from the leadership of the Labour Party. So, like, since that time, the guy that came in, Keir Starmer, is basically like the difference between the Tories and the Labour Party now is essentially like much like the difference between the Republicans and the Democrats right now. I mean,
no, exactly. Labour Party is just cut to nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they just slashed it to ribbons, and like that was essentially not even if like Biden had won the primary, but if Joe Manchin had become president or something like that, or leader of the opposition. It's disgusting, man. But yeah, in the United States, there's also the possibility in the short term of workers getting a rail strike happening. This is not like passenger rail. This is a lot more like the logistics sector, right?
Lay it on me. We got like 5 more minutes.
Yeah, U.S. railroad workers in closer to a possible national strike. After Biden appointed an emergency board to help resolve a labor dispute, rail workers warn, quote, "We have the ability to stop the trains from moving." This is, and in these times, it was Dateline just a couple days ago, this Monday, the 25th. After waiting over 2 years to secure a new union contract and still reeling from the impacts of Wall Street ordered cost-cutting measures, 115,000 beleaguered workers who operate the nation's freight railroads are inching closer towards a possible strike, which could come as soon as September. Now, like that seems like a really long time away, but there's a lot of like weird procedure that needs to happen for these kind of things to happen.
Mm-hmm.
In an effort to drive down operating expenses and reward their wealthy shareholders, in recent years, railroad companies have implemented precision scheduled railroading, or PSR, a version of just-in-time lean production that centers on reducing the workforce and closing facilities. You know why the supply chain in America just breaks all the time now? It's because we just thin all of the people out. We get as few people on staff to do all these jobs as possible. So if there's any kind of disruption in it, it becomes extremely fragile and it falls to bits, right?
Correct.
For years, they cut and cut and cut. It didn't matter which department or terminal. It was indiscriminate, said Michael Paul Lindsay, an Idaho-based locomotive engineer with Union Pacific. That's one of the railroad companies. Over the past 6 years, the major Class 1 railroads like BNSF, Union Pacific, CSX, and Norfolk Southern have slashed their collective workforce by 29%. That's almost a third. 45,000 workers, leaving the industry woefully understaffed and putting extra strain on workers already accustomed to long, irregular hours. So essentially, they're basically working people to the bone, not giving pay increases. They're just essentially making them work overtime all the time. Despite that fact, railroad industries remain highly profitable, with owners raking in $183 billion in stock buybacks and dividends since 2010. That is a jaw-dropping amount of money.
It's crazy, dude.
Since 2022, coalitions of 12 unions, dubbed the United Rail Unions, have been in negotiations with the major railroad companies represented by National Carriers Conference Committee. The unions include the Teamsters Affiliated Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and the Trainmen, the Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, and Transport Workers Division, Smart TD. I've got a buddy of mine that's actually a member of Smart TD. But with bargaining kept behind closed doors, a few specifics of the negotiation have been made public until recently. But in addition to raises in healthcare, workers say one of the major points of contention is staffing. So essentially, they're not even they definitely are not against the idea of getting raises, but the top priority seems to be we need more people out here working these rails because we're killing people. I mean, like railroad work is dangerous, right?
So dangerous.
I mean, like those trains are big.
Crazy.
And if they run over your foot or whatever, or just like run into somebody, like you can see people get squashed between cars or all kinds of crazy stuff. Those things are heavy.
It's bad, bro. Like, yeah, oh man, the amount of stuff that it's like, I feel like railroads are like it's the transportation that like we've forgotten about. It just kind of sits in the background, but so much stuff gets moved by train in this country, and so much of that is not owned by the government, and it's just
the tracks themselves are owned by private companies.
Yeah, you know how we love wrestling. We can talk about like it's like the territory days of wrestling. Where these train companies, these railway companies have just cut up the country in their own little fiefdoms. It's so bad.
Yeah. Apparently, Brandon's been involved in this as well.
Of course he has. Amtrak Joe.
Mm-hmm. The unions and railroads entered into mediation earlier this year when it became clear an agreement would not be achieved through direct bargaining. A mediated negotiation reached an impasse in June. In accordance with the Railway Labor Act's cumbersome process, the next step was a mandatory 30-day cooling off period, at the end of which either party could have entered into self-help, meaning a strike or a lockout, unless President Joe Brandon appointed a presidential emergency board to examine the dispute and produce recommendations on the settlement within another 30 days. This is crazy, by the way. The fact that that they have to like jump through these extra hoops, in order to like go on strike is insane, right? That's really weird. This month, at the end of the cooling off period, Biden did indeed step in and appointed a emergency board consisting of 3 legal experts who have helped resolve labor disputes in the past, delaying the possibility of the strike. So basically, Brandon slowed everything down. Quote, anybody who thought Biden wouldn't appoint a PEB was foolish, Kamino told in these times. There's too much at stake politically. He also knows that we will kick the railroad's ass because there will be a rock solid support for this strike and the economy would quickly grind to a halt. So like if Biden didn't appoint this board, all your Amazon stuff, all of your anything that you want in the world ain't going nowhere. This country shut down. Like, you know what's primarily transported over rail these days? If it's not a pipeline, oil is transported by train, which is super important.
I mean, we again, like the amount of labor that just takes this country, that allows us to just live our lives, our little like convenient lives that we just kind of forget exists, and we don't treat these people right, because it goes back to the thing we talked about to kind of wrap up the show. Comes back to the thing of the language that's used, like the corporate speak language. So these people who are working these jobs know that they're holding the country together. That's why they're so slow to strike, because they don't want a collapse in society.
They're not trying to burn it all down.
Yeah, but they just want fair trade for their labor. That's all. Jeez.
And yeah, I mean, and sometimes, look, man, this is the way I look at it. If you don't have that weapon on the table and the credible, like, if the gun's not loaded, you can't pretend that you're going to use it, right?
No, absolutely.
So, like, and again, obviously, in Britain, the gun is loaded, and they currently got it pointed directly at the government. In this situation, hopefully the workers are on board for this. Hopefully they have a spine, and hopefully they get everything that they want and they need. But anyway, that's gonna, I think, bring us to a close for today's show. We're pre-recorded today, so it's a little bit different here, but we do want to get used to doing the old streaming schedule on Twitch. Twitch.tv/Good Morning Comrade Radio. You can follow me on Twitter at Eminent Prof. Follow Robert on Twitter at Comrade. You are listening to WHIVLP New Orleans. This has been Good Morning Comrade. We love you. Goodbye.